Hi and welcome to my channel. I'm Simon and today I'm back with a slightly different reading vlog from usual because I tend to do reading vlogs over a week, but I realised that can be quite restrictive, and so actually have a reading vlog coming at the start of October that was filmed over 2 and a bit weeks. I mean, imagine. But this reading vlog is going to be me just reading one single book, and that book is the book that's been recommended to me the most in 2022 by lots and lots of you, by lots of people on the Sky Arts Book Club Facebook group, and also bizarrely got recommended to, bizarrely but brilliantly, got recommended to me by two of my friends who also love books, and they are Tess, my former assistant from when I worked on BBC's Novels That Shaped Our World Libraries programme as a project manager, and with the BBC link, although this is not sponsored by the BBC, the lovely Sophie Rayworth, who is a broadcaster and presenter on the BBC, and I judged the Costa Book Awards with, RIP, several years ago, and we've stayed in touch and we recommend each other the books loads. The book is, because I've waffled on for quite a while already, let's be honest, Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus, which I believe has now been in the book charts, the top 10 I think, for like 23 weeks or something, so it kind of makes it the bookish version of Shares Believe. I actually got sent this back in 2021 by the lovely Alison Barrow at Doubleday and Transworld, and she'd raved about it, and I meant to get to it and then for some reason didn't. And I have to say, when the final version came through, and I'm just being really honest here, and it's not meant in a shady or snarky way, but this cover kind of put me off. It felt a bit twee and maybe not me, but I've heard from lots of you lovely lot that this has actually got some real dark undertones, as well as being very comforting and joyful too, and that sold it to me more. So yeah, I'm really intrigued. Also, I should say, the lovely Elizabeth Day has got a quote on here: a novel that sparks joy with every page, which doesn't allude to the darkness, so we'll see. I'll judge who's right and who's wrong on this later. But yeah, I love Elizabeth, and I obviously trust her opinion on books too. So yeah, I thought over the next however long I would film what's going on. So there'll probably be cat content, maybe a few snapshots of other bits of the house that you might not have seen, food, I imagine there'll be quite a lot of cheese, yeah. And on that note, actually, food-wise, I am going to go and get some breakfast and get cracking on this. I should say, actually, I have no idea what this book is about, which is odd considering there's been so many recommendations of it to me. Also quite a lot of discussion about the TV rights and who's playing who. But yeah, I kind of like that though. I'm not a big fan of knowing too much about a book before I go into it. I kind of like to go into it blind. That's the plan. I'm going to go and get some breakfast, get cracking on this, maybe give you an update when I've read a little bit of it to see what my initial thoughts are, and then possibly like halfway through and towards the end. Don't know if it'll be quarterly, we'll see. Why am I trying to plan it? Let's just roll with it. Let's relax. Let's chill. But yeah, that's the plan. I'm going to pick this up, and I shall report back when I've read some. It is a little later on, and I thought I'd have a catch up with you about how I'm getting on with Lessons in Chemistry, which has this incredible cover under the dust jacket. I always take a dust jacket off when I'm reading because I like to protect the dust jacket, which I know is kind of nonsensical because dust jackets are there to protect the books. Anyway, it's about a woman called Elizabeth Zott, and when we meet her is kind of thinking about possibly it being the end of her life. And I think this book is going to be one of those books that I really like, that kind of start either really at the end or sometimes in the middle. Sorry, there's Oscar downstairs smacking the cat flap, which means he wants to be let out even though he knows how to get out of the cat flap. I have raised divas. Elizabeth is thinking about what's going on with her life, and then we find out a little bit about how she's ended up being this sort of well-known TV cook who really makes like stews and lasagnas and really good hearty grub, none of your fancy schmancy stuff, and how actually she was a scientist and a chemist beforehand. And we go backwards to when she met Calvin, who I think is going to become probably her husband and the father of her child. He's not mentioned at the beginning, so I don't know what's awaiting there. And I will say this book made me laugh out loud when we went back, almost in a dark sense of humour where it shouldn't have made me laugh, but when we go back to them comparing their family lives when they're courting, where did that word come from? I'm so old-fashioned, but it does have that kind of Doris Day old-fashioned feel to it, I will say, and I love Doris Day stuff, so that's a good thing. Anyway, yeah, there's a scene where they're talking about their parents and what happened to them, and dark humour wise I laughed out loud. And then I actually had a little cry when Elizabeth's talking about her big brother, and I won't say any more than that, but if you've read the book you'll know what I mean. And I thought that was beautifully done, and so far it is definitely winning me over. It's got a kind of coziness to it, but at the same time in that kind of Hollywood glamour kind of way. It's kind of got a timelessness to it as well, and yeah, I am loving finding out what happened to, I mean, some of it's really shocking, and there are these darker underlying moments that I wasn't expecting that lots of you said there were, so you were all right. So far, so good. I'm not going to catch up, I've only read 6 chapters, and I'm not going to catch up with you every 6 chapters. I'll probably talk to you about halfway through and let you know how I'm getting on then. But yeah, one thing you would have seen in the B-roll and twinkly jingly jangly music is that I decided to share what book posts I was getting with you. And this is something that I might do going forward in vlogs, maybe, because hauls are going to change where I'm only showing you the books that I'm really excited about that come in the post, not everything I get. Anyway, one thing that I didn't show you was what's in this box, and this is something that I'm very excited about. This is an order I've done from Readings, who are an independent bookshop chain in Australia and where I get lots of Australian and imported fiction from. So I thought I would share what's in here with you, and there are books, not just this, but this is actually perfect because I need to send Mum a parcel of books, so I might use this now to keep recycling, even though it's a recyclable product. So what did I order myself? Oh, I can't quite get it out, hang on, as the nun said to the vicar. I have here Faithless by Alice Nelson, one of these women sort of leaning covers that seem to be a big thing. I picked this to take me over getting cheaper postage. I'm not quite sure what it's about, but it does say on the front a remarkable story about love, literature, family, mortality, and that which survives. That Michael Cunningham says that about that, which is a great quote. It says it's out from Vintage in Australia, so it might be coming here maybe, but yeah, I'm intrigued for this one. I've heard comparisons to like Rooney and stuff, but then everyone compares themselves to Rooney, don't they? Oh, this is the book that made me do the purchasing. I think that's got my order details in it. And that is This Devastating Fever by Sophie Cunningham, which I've wanted to read because Charlotte Wood has been raving about it. And that, for me, is all I needed. That and the fact that I really love that cover with a that cover with a comet on it. That's gorgeous, I think. So there we have that one. And then I think both of these I have other books by the authors of, and I haven't read them, and I was like, I keep seeing them on Instagram because I follow quite a lot of bookstagram folk in Australia, and one of them is Peggy Frew's new novel Wildflowers. She wrote Hope Farm, which is about cults. I haven't read that book, but I've really wanted to and need to get to it, and this reminded me of that. But also I was like, oh, I need to read it, it sounds amazing. And then we also have, signed by the author as well, Marshmallow by Victoria Hannan. Was that one signed by the author as well? Yes, signed by the author too. So I've done really well. This is the author of Kokomo, which loads and loads of people, including Jacqueline at 6 Minutes For Me, told me that I had to read. It's on the shelves over there. Just remind me I need to get to it, and then I can get to this one too. But yeah, I've been seeing these about loads and wanted to get them and forgot with my last readings order when I ordered the readings prize shortlist, which I'm hoping to read quite soon. And then this one Charlotte Wood raved about, and I was like, oh, do you know what, no excuse needed. And then no excuse really to get an extra one to take me over the shipping amount. It goes with my top, that doesn't it, quite nicely. I'm also aware I'm slightly turning into my library furniture. The library does need a sort, but I don't think I'm going to do that this afternoon. I'm going to head back to lessons in chemistry. Going to probably have a bath later. I need to go and feed Foster, who lives, a cat that lives over the road, who you may have seen on my Instagram stalk sometimes and comes and like stares at us through the window and stuff. Very cute, but also sort of loves me, sort of doesn't, which I find tricky with cats because normally cats just love me full stop, but not to brag. And just have a chill. I kind of want to watch a film with my very tapas-based tea, and I think for lunch, well, it's probably going to be a cheese feast and possibly some of those real New York housewives. I've already had my fix. I'm catching up on New York, so I kind of fell out of love with it, but I've also watched the latest Beverly Hills one this morning. I love that franchise. Anyway, waffling on, that's the latest. I will catch up with you anon. Morning everyone, please excuse the pile of books there. I'm going to be filming my August book haul shortly. Well, I'm going to get changed out of my pyjamas. I wanted to have a catch up with you this morning before the day goes on and chat to you about how I'm doing with Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. I am now about halfway through. I'm on chapter 20, page 167, and I'm really enjoying it. I will say I had a blip, and that's because suddenly out of nowhere the book very much concentrated on rowing, which I don't really find very interesting and didn't really find that interesting. Even though, like, I got why it's part of the story, I was just a bit like, ugh. However, it has moved on from that. There's still a bit of rowing here and there. I mean, I have history. I don't like books set on boats. I don't really like sports in books, so it wasn't going to appeal to me. That's not the author's fault. That's just my taste. Other than that, I'm really, really loving it. I can't say too much more about what's going on because, well, it would spoil it. So Elizabeth's life has changed like massively. So that's one big thing, but I can't really say how. She's met a neighbour though called Harriet, who is a wonderful character with a very sad backstory that I am very much enjoying reading her character, not her sad backstory obviously, and I'm loving her. It's interesting reading Bonnie Garmus's sort of men, not wrongly, because a lot of men were, and the way society was so misogynist at that time that the book is set in the 50s and 60s. But the men kind of are quite often the butt of the joke, which I'm enjoying, but also kind of there's a bit of me every so often that's like, can we have a little bit like, I don't know, I need at least one sort of, I can't believe I'm saying this, I need at least one cis hetero man to kind of not be a bit of a whopper. But maybe those characters will come as I'm reading on. But yeah, I'm really, really lost in it and enjoying it and looking forward to where it's going. So that's my very rubbish update. I can't really, it's really tricky actually, because I can't really say much more without like giving things away. So, if you've read it, you'll know that something very emotional happens that I got really, really upset about. Oh, and I should say one thing that I really love that I didn't think I would is there is a dog in here called 630, and he is absolutely brilliant, hilarious, and I've really, 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 really warmed to him. And he sort of talks, and I normally hate that. I don't like talking animals in fiction, but that has been done absolutely brilliantly, and I love him as a character, and I love the fact that he's learning words, and yeah, that I really, really loved. The chemistry stuff I'm finding quite interesting, which I'm kind of surprised at. And I was actually talking to my mum yesterday and saying that my stepdad, who is was a chemistry teacher, is a chemistry teacher? Is he retired? Now does he only work in the pub, in the brewery? Or anyway, that's a conversation that I'm having myself. My stepdad was a chemistry teacher. He was my chemistry teacher when my mum got pregnant when we were at the same school. I mean, imagine that, because my mum taught the school and obviously he was my teacher. Anyway, but I think he would really enjoy it. I don't think he'd pick it up in a million years because of this cover, which I don't think I'm going to stop wanging on about how I think it's just wrong for the book. But yeah, I think he would really love it. So I'm going to probably send this to him via my mother when I finished it, which I'm hoping to do today. The plan is this morning to chill, read, need to feed Foster, and then I think later on Chris and I are going to go and have fish and chips in Park Gate, which is one of my favourite parts of the Wirral, and they do literally the best fish and chips I've ever had in my life, and they have an amazing ice cream parlour there too. So that's going to be the plan, but I'll catch up with you when I've finished, hopefully later today. I'd like to crack this before I go out for tea. That's my aim today. So yeah, I'll have a chat with you about it later. Hi everyone, I am not long out the bath, where I finished Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus, and I have to say I really overall really enjoyed the experience. It's not going to be a 5-star read for me, but it's definitely a 4.5, and I'll focus on why that is first. I found the rowing stuff just a little bit boring. And that's just a personal thing. That's not anything to do with Bonnie, as I think I mentioned earlier. It just, sports and books don't really do anything for me. Boats don't do anything for me either. And whilst it was an entertaining and it kind of was important to the plot, I felt like it was like an extra thing when there was so much else to learn, like about the chemistry that you're following and the cooking and all of that. The other thing that I had a slight issue with was that I felt at the end it was all not, I don't mind it being wrapped up neatly, but it felt like over explained, like it was over, the book had slightly overcomplicated itself and it needed to be fully thrashed out by two different characters as to what had been going on before it kind of reached its final conclusion. But I really love the characters, I really love the writing. It made me cry, it made me laugh. I think Elizabeth's a brilliant character. I was feeling like there was something lacking with some of the male characters, apart from them just being bastards. But actually, as it goes on, we meet the Reverend, and we meet her producer, because she ends up working on telly, which you sort of know at the beginning, but it's also given away here. And those characters were brilliant, and I loved the way they came about. And, you know, I will say that Calvin as a character I really liked, but again, I felt like something was missing. I think it was maybe because the character was withdrawn slightly, and Elizabeth is to a point, but Elizabeth just came much more fully formed, but I suppose you spend more time with her. I loved Mad, I loved 6:30, I thought he was a brilliant character. I loved Harriet. So much to really, really, really love in this. And I'm so glad that lots of you told me to read it, and especially thanks to Tess and Sophie, because they got me on the same day, and that was like a sign. But loads of you have recommended it since, so I really, really thank you for keeping it in the back of my mind that I need to read it. And yeah, I'm intrigued for the adaptation. There was something slightly Doris Day Hollywood about it that I really, really loved. Yeah, and I kind of wish Doris Day was still going, because all this, I don't know, I could see this being a Doris Day movie. It had all of that about it that I loved, and that slightly sort of glossy, soft focus feel to it, but also had some real dark, hidden depth moments too. So yeah, really, really, really enjoyed it. So thank you very much for recommending it. And if you enjoyed me doing this, let me know if you'd like me to do it again with another book where I kind of take you along with me as I'm reading. And speaking of that, I'm not going to end the vlog here. I'm going to take you to Parkgate, which I think I mentioned earlier as well, where we're going to go for fish and chips for dinner, and watch the sunset. The sun goes down over Wales. You'll be able to see, like, in the distance, basically this big hill. That's actually Wales, imagine. So there we go. Thank you all again for recommending reading this. I'll definitely read the next Bonnie Garmus book, whatever it may be. And it does show as well, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, because I think the cover put me off, as I mentioned, and maybe would be like why my stepdad might not read it, but I'm going to get him to read it because he's a chemist. Right, off to get some fish and chips by the estuary, overlooking Wales, and I will see you in another video soon. Oh, man, I couldn't open it. So done. Ta-da!